I just want to take a moment and talk about why we want to do this. The idea of having people share their personal struggles is because in our business, I get to speak to people that have various health conditions on the day-to-day. And often, the common theme amongst these people are that they feel isolated and they feel alone in their condition. And to me, being on the receiving end of it, I think to myself, I've just spoken to 3 people that have the same condition as you do today. So I'm hoping that through having these conversations with people and them sharing their personal struggles, we can empower those with hope, with guidance, and even speak about some of the pitfalls that they might face down the line. That's why we do it.
I have a tough time asking for help.
They say comparison is the thief of joy.
You can take on like the world and you can do it.
Every human has a limit.
You can't compare yourself to people.
How much real estate would you say this occupies in your brain?
I don't want to trade my time for money.
Did you feel very out of control or very disempowered growing up?
I don't think I knew I was burnt out up until I was burnt out.
Hi, Carmin.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today and having this conversation.
Very excited to be here.
So to start it off, we're going to start off with the classic. Carmin, tell us what is wrong with you.
In terms of what's wrong with me, I think I hit a point where I was so burnt out that I started to disassociate. So if I think back to early days, I've always been a hard worker. I've always viewed myself as independent. So an early memory I've been independent. I even have a memory of just telling my mom that my parents forced me to be independent.
My parents forced me to be independent.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point of view. Why would you say that?
If I take it back to really, really early days.
How early? So what age group would you say is really early?
12.
Okay, so it's
primary school.
All right, fair enough. It's quite young. Yeah.
And the context around that, or where it came from, or what even happened in that moment, I have no idea. But
Okay.
that statement will always stick with me.
It's funny how you have these certain phrases or these memories that just kind of stick with you all the way through. There's even one that I remember saying, and I have absolutely, like you said, no context as to how we got there. My gran, she once asked all the grandkids, what do they want to be when they grow up? And my cousin, he wants to be a fireman or police officer, whatever it was. And all I said was, I want to be rich. And I must have been 8 or 9. I was so young. I don't even remember why I said it or why I felt that that's the answer. But yeah, you have these memories and they kind of stick with you.
Yeah, they definitely do. In terms of anything else around that, I have no idea. That if anyone has to ask me my earliest memory in terms of how I view myself, 100% that.
But the word independence is an interesting one. Because that's the one that sticks out, even from our previous conversations. Why do you feel like you have to have this need for independence? And what does independence mean to you?
I think independence to me is kind of I don't need to ask anyone for anything.
Okay.
No matter what I want to do, I can do it, and it's on my own terms, and I kind of just don't have to ask. I can just go and I can do it, and yeah.
So when you say asking for help, right? Because asking for help or needing someone can go very far into very different avenues. What specific avenues are that? Is it everything? You don't want to ask anyone for help in any aspect, or is it just a certain aspect?
That's a touchy one. Yeah, I think I have a tough time asking for help, in any setting. But I think it goes back to kind of also just being vulnerable and being I don't need you, I can do it. I don't know how it all ties together. In my brain, it kind of does tie together. Where I don't want to ask you because you don't need to know, because I can be independent and I can take care of it and I can just solve it. So I think going back to your previous question, independence for me also is kind of just taking control of the situation and just dealing with it.
Interesting. Taking control of the situation. So, before we got to the point where you felt like this is something you need to do and you're responsible for taking control, did you feel very out of control or very disempowered growing up?
No, I wouldn't say disempowered.
Okay.
I think if anything, always empowered.
Okay, interesting.
So, yeah, it's completely different. Probably that need for control or anything. I have such a good support system in family and friends. I think I've always done a good job of surrounding myself with like really good people and
Okay.
like kind of noticing like when to disassociate because someone doesn't kind of like serve me in the same way that I would them, because all I want to do is like just empower people and show support to them. Yeah, so no matter like what accomplishments I had, there was always like, you can do it and this is amazing, and like no matter what you want to take on, like go for it because we know you can.
Okay, so then actually this is a different angle. So if we consider it from that angle, would the empowerment be the reason why you feel so capable and like why you feel that you need to take on the control?
Yeah, and how I'm learning a lot here.
No, I mean I'm just asking questions. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think so. So I think I made a point to you earlier as well that growing up, I didn't grow up in like the most like financially stable household. So I was always with like my basic needs, but in terms of like, there's always things, I think like growing up, like you always want like whatever other people have.
Yeah. Especially as a kid.
Yeah. And I think even as an adult, like it's so easy to still do that, but you do just grow more and like you evolve and you kind of learn that sometimes like that isn't the best thing.
Well, for adults, they've coined it keeping up with the Joneses. But they don't have that term for a kid. For a kid, you just don't
understand why you can't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think growing up, like I always, like I remember asking for things or like asking you if I could like do things, and it was always just like no. And I don't remember like ever being told an explanation or be like, no, like there isn't money for this or there isn't for that.
Yeah.
Which for a fair point, like probably like half the stuff I wanted, like it was probably a waste of money.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it's often it's not the rationale that is what's remembered, it's how you felt at the time.
Yeah, it's definitely that. So I think it's also that thing of like just being told no, and like you kind of get into like a repetitive thing of like, no, you can't do this because of this reason, and like, no, you can't do this because of this reason.
Now, okay, let me take a step back for a second. So we have Carmin, who's growing up super empowered, and she's also a fantastic achiever, constantly striving, and then you connect that with the problem of financial instability, and now we have like this recipe for Carmin. Now we have someone who's not pioneering, but like who has her eye on the target, which is financial independence. And the best part about it is you feel capable, you can achieve it, like you can sort this problem out.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, it's intriguing, because that's the problem that you felt that you need to direct your attention to. So then, now we continue. So obviously throughout school, I mean, you mentioned previously to me that during school times you were achieving great results.
Yeah.
Which is important because I mean, you're obviously you're good at what you do, and you've also told me a few times that being good at something is very important to you, and it's a really formed part of your identity as who you are as a person. Obviously, everyone loves to be good at something, but for you, it's to be good at basically anything you're doing. Is it how you want to be perceived by people you don't know, or people you do know, or anyone?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think taking back to like everything, so not to sound cocky or anything, but like I do remember always just having like good grades or playing hockey and like I was good at it, or kind of just like doing anything and like it just came natural to me, and then kind of like tying that in to be like, okay, cool, it came natural, and I had like all the support and everything, that it was kind of like a perceived thing of like whatever you do, it's going to be really good.
Yeah.
And then kind of like tying that into being like, okay, cool, like if I touch this or like if I do this, then I have to be really good because that's like how people perceive me.
Yeah, they're expecting it of you.
Yeah. Which 9 times out of 10 is probably like, realistically, no one cares. Like if you fail, like you fail, it's cool. Like no one's going to remember. Yeah. But then it's like, it eats in me and like I'll remember.
Okay, you're holding yourself to the standard now.
Yeah.
And each time you do something well, it pushes the standard just a little higher, just a little bit higher, just a little bit higher.
Yeah. I think it also kind of like, not to feed an ego, but it also kind of like does do that because now you have this like whole track record of like everything that you've done well.
Yeah.
And this way of like, I think I also have this like quote, it might also just be the Oprah quote of like everything is like figure outable.
Okay.
And I kind of like just hold that and like, if I don't know it now, like I'll figure it out.
Okay.
So also have like that kind of personality.
I think it's a very empowering belief system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that obviously we're talking about this from the lens of it's great and we're gonna get to the point how you're just doing so well, but it's funny how every coin has two sides. So we're gonna get to the point where something that can empower you can eventually take away from you as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about that now, that point. So now we're talking about we get through school, you're doing really well. you start your career. Similarly, you take on a lot of responsibility because that's how I know you. And then you eventually start to get to a point where, and every human has a limit.
I started working when I was 17 and kind of just didn't stop. And in that, like, everything just overlapped. So I think part of it is also just me wanting to say yes to everything, wanting to be involved everywhere, and then also kind of being perceived as like this like other side of it. I mean, like, okay, cool, like you can take on like the world and you can do it. So kind of like also getting back into that, because I've always done things that like overlapped. Be like, no, whatever you throw at Carmin, like she'll figure it out and she can handle it. But then also kind of like also wanting to be seen like this hard worker that's like doing everything, you can do everything. And then you get to like this other side of the coin and be like, you can't do everything.
So is there an individual? So oftentimes I say people that have this notion that they need to strive for success, or they need to be this individual that they perceive themselves to be, or they're this hard worker. Is there someone you have in your head that you're striving towards, or is it just yourself? You know, like there's no, I'm gonna say, famous business person or athlete or someone that you're comparing your work ethic to try to maintain at that level. So just yourself. Okay.
I could answer that like straight no.
Okay.
I think it's actually quite funny because I've never had like this famous person or this like person in the media that I always look up to. The people that I typically look up to are like people that are in my circle.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, cool, like you have the same experience as me and we had the same like circumstance, and like you achieved this and I can see like how you achieved this.
Okay.
Where I think if I look at like a Hollywood star, like we probably didn't like start in the same circumstances.
What does financial independence mean to you?
I think it's just the ability to like, I think a lot in this podcast I'm going to say I just want to do what I want. But it's just the ability to just say yes to things.
Okay.
Like I want to travel. I don't want to work 24/7.
Right. Interesting you say that. You don't want to work 24/7, but I know you love to.
But I love working.
Yeah.
But I think the goal is like I've said it so many times to a lot of people that I don't want to trade my time for money. So obviously like now while I'm learning and like I don't know everything that's out there. So like I'm open to working and like taking things on and kind of just exploring, like, okay, cool, I like this, I don't like this. But in the long run, like I never want to trade my time for money. And I also I think the biggest thing that I've seen like growing up is like people will work like hours and hours and hours, and then they'll also get like such like little peanuts back, and they won't be able to support themselves, or they kind of like can just support like basic needs and like not do what they really want to do, and then that like filters into like a lot of like unhappiness and like not taking care of yourself. So I think it's kind of that, like just having the ability to say yes and be like, cool, I want to do this, I can do it, without even like having to like check something or like worry about like what's happening tomorrow or the next day.
So if I were to focus on this for a second, and have you ever put a number attached to this? So you have these various gurus speak about this topic, and they have actually tried to assign a value to it to show that you need less than you think you do. To be able to travel, does that mean 4 times a year? Does it mean 3 times a year? Does it mean twice? Does it mean 8?
As much as I want to.
As much as you want to. So I guess the idea would be, what would as much as I want to look like? And then what kind of traveling are you talking about? And then, you know, what items are you looking at buying? Like you could actually assign a value to this and be like, well, this is how much I actually need to earn to do this. And it's usually a lot less than what people think.
A short answer is no. Like I don't have this value that's like going off in my head. But I do agree with that. Like I think if you give someone a budget to work with, they're going to work with that. I think whenever I think of like financial independence, I kind of think of like you don't have a number, which is kind of like realistic.
Okay.
Like,
it's like more.
Realistic.
Someone
it's just
says,
like
how much do you need? And someone says more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said that, but it's like a famous phrase.
Yeah, which funny, like it's not like you can't quantify it.
Yeah.
Also because like at what point do you also like kind of stop? Because you're always just going to want more.
Yeah.
So I think, like there's like small things that I attach to it as well. Being like, okay, cool, like am I checking this? Am I checking that?
Yeah.
Or am I kind of just like actioning it? And like,
if you haven't assigned specific, so I'm going to press on this specifically because I think this is important for, especially people in our sort of generation, in today's society, especially with the cost of living crisis. If you don't assign a value to this, how can you then know when you've made it, or when you should be dialing back, when you should be having more balance? How do you navigate balance if you don't know what you're working towards?
Very good question. I think that, like, honestly, it's still to be decided.
Okay. It is tough. It's tough. I mean,
it is tough.
It's very personal as well. You know?
Yeah. If I could tell you, I definitely would.
Right.
But I think of it more in terms of things always change. So I also don't, like, I think it's so good to have goals and to have this, like, thing to work towards, which is amazing. But I've never agreed with, like, you need to have this, like, 5-year goal and you need to have this, like, major thing, like, planned out. And, like, this is your step, or, like, this is your goal, and you break it down into, like, this month. Because if you follow that so, is it rigidly?
Yeah, rigidly.
Is that the word? Yeah. Then you kind of just lose out on so many things in between, because now you're so stuck on this, where I don't want to lose out on the things in between. So I think I have, like, an end goal. I think my end goal is to just kind of be, like, happy where I am in the moment.
Okay. I mean, it's a very vague.
Yeah, it's super vague.
You can be happy where you are right now, and then therefore you've met your goal.
Yeah, but I'm not. I think there's still so I'm happy, but I think, like, there's still so much more to achieve.
Okay. It requires a lot of introspection, I think, and like we're gonna get to the point we talk about this pinnacle, but it seems like you're on a route right now where you're figuring this one out. Yeah,
100%.
So then let's kind of go back to the point where you're at work and now you're grinding it out and you're putting in the hours. What is happening here? So talk to me about your social life, your family life, just the amount of work and stress that's currently starting to accumulate, you know, gradually, as obviously you become better at work. People naturally in work, when someone's good, everyone gives them more stuff to do. Yeah. It's just how it is. And like the most difficult thing to say when people perceive you as doing well is just to say, no, I can't do more. I'm busy with this. And just saying no is very difficult. I know they say it's one of the most important words to say when you're working adult, is just saying no. But you obviously, at this point now, you're trying to take it on. So talk me through that life. What was it like?
Yeah, I think I'll touch a little bit on what I mentioned earlier as well, where when I started working, I've always had stuff that overlapped.
Yeah. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But then also, like, everything ties into everything. Where I've also worked in so many industries. I've waitressed, I've worked in a call center, I taught English online. At the same time I was studying, I was interning at a company in their marketing department. Then I worked for an agency. I tried to start my own agency. Then went to work for another agency. Now in another agency. So it's kind of like jumped around, like tried different stuff, like tried different areas of marketing. And in that, and like all those like different areas, it's kind of been like, you're really good at this. And if you take all of this on, like, also it goes back to like tying an identity to it. But like the thing of Carmin's good, like she can do this, like whatever you give her, she'll figure it out. And then my thing of also like throw everything at me because I'll show you I can handle it, and like it is possible. But like realistically, no human can handle everything, and it's not possible. But I'm also quite a social person. Like I love being with people. I do need my alone time, like just to like revert back and like de-stress for like an hour, 2 hours, and then I can like burst out again. But I think kind of like doing everything, I always also had this like safety net of if one thing doesn't work out, like there is another option. So kind of always had like one thing as like a backup.
Okay, is this work-wise?
Yeah, work-wise. Okay. And then last year I was working for a company in their marketing department, and then also like kind of trying to do my own agency, and then working in another agency as well. And then there was a turning point where I went full-time, like just into the agency, and that felt like a very big step to me because it was just one thing, and I kind of like didn't have that like little safety net anymore of like two things
in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it also just did get so busy where like that was my first part where I learned to say no to things.
Okay.
And like I just couldn't do everything. And I did try like this time last year where I took on like new things with everyone. Like no matter what came my way, I was like, yes, I can do it. And like it's amazing. And then I realized that 24 hours in a day are not enough.
Yeah.
Because I definitely needed more time to do stuff. And then goes back to the point of like not asking for help and like kind of just taking everything on. And not even like telling people that like I was so tired and I couldn't. So it definitely built up from this time last year, and then kind of like let things go and like settled a little bit more. Okay. So it kind of like went up, down. Like
you know what's very interesting with you specifically is that even if I ask you about other things outside of work, you can't constantly go back to work. Like that's just it's just where your head is at. It's like, so, and I think that speaks to the not the problem, but it speaks to the point I'm trying to get to. Is like it's very evident that. Actually, I don't want to say it because I want you to talk about this. But I can see that other parts of your life start to take the back seat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's
and
very true.
you had a really interesting comment when you were telling me about a moment with your gran where you're going to visit her, and even though you're going to visit her, you're still working. Like you have your laptop with everywhere you go, taking your laptop.
Yeah. The one, it was actually my aunt.
Oh,
so
aunt,
like specifically stands out to her, but like 9 times out of 10 I did when I was visiting my gran as well.
Okay.
Like anyone actually, like my laptop would follow me everywhere, and like as long as I had that, or even like I have my phone, because everything's just online and I can do everything. It kind of like just doesn't switch off, which is a good point now because I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to the moment. I think it's interesting. Now that you're working so much and the amount of work that you're doing, it's because you're trying to keep up this identity of being a workaholic and like being an achiever, how that impacts how to start to erode your social life. And you weren't making time for friends, you weren't making time for family, just because you keep trying to keep this identity and keep taking on more and more and more. And then we start going down the route of how now you're leading towards the burnout. Yeah.
I think it was also like a long time coming, but I don't think I like knew I was burnt out up until I was burnt out. And now that like I know what the signs are, I definitely had it like way before. So it became like really apparent towards the end of last year. And now knowing like how I felt and like how different it is to like what I am on like a normal, like when there's no stress and like I'm very chilled and everything, I can definitely see the signs, but like I don't think you know it up until you've been through it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of this thing of like saying yes to everything and like taking it on and then classifying like everything in the time like as important. Like I would think that every like small task is important because I also really believe that like if you say you're going to do something, like you get it done and you need to be like person of your word. And if people are not going to trust that, then like you have nothing. So I think I would kind of like burn myself out, be like, I promised someone this, and no matter like how, you wouldn't even know like how it got done, but like I would get that done and you would think it, like it was done like ages ago. Meanwhile, like I was pushing to do it. So that was kind of like the theme of the whole of last year.
Okay.
And then I think it just comes like a domino effect where like something's just unsustainable for like a long period of time and eventually it's going to catch up to you. So if I think of like the beginning of last year, even like towards the end, like it wasn't a consistent thing of like, I would really prioritize health. Like I didn't even understand the importance of it. I would kind of be like, I'm a machine and I can do whatever and I need to be up at this time. And like I would there was a co-working space that I used to work at and I also kind of realized that you can enter there like whenever if you had access to it. Right. So you didn't have to go in at like 9. You can go in there at like 6:30 or like 5 or like whatever time. And then same for like when you leave. So you can also just leave at like whatever time you want to go. Yeah. So I would also kind of be like, okay, cool. Like I would get in at this time. And then also kind of like also being seen as that person as like
first one in, last one out.
First one in, like last one out. And then trying to keep that like momentum going for ages. And then it kind of also just got to a point where I was like, I'm not the same person like at all.
But to keep that up, things have to suffer though. You have to forego other things. So like what are you currently foregoing? Well, what were you foregoing?
100% health. Like, and I think I wouldn't say it's like it was so dramatic in terms of I'm say health, but then in terms of like people and kind of saying like, okay, cool, I can't do this because like work is so important. Yeah. Or I can't do this because like this is like very important. But obviously if you like assign significance to something, you're gonna make it important and like
I think that's important. Yeah. It's an important point.
But yeah, it was definitely that. And then
so how did your health take a toll? What was happening? Run me through that period of time.
Yeah. I think there's so many important things. So sleep. Definitely not sleeping enough because I also did my best work at night. And then I also like do my best work in the morning.
Okay, I see you're saying. That's tough because if you're trying to make up work, you're doing extra work, you're prioritizing that in the time where you're most effective. Yeah. But if that's at night or even early in the morning, then something needs to go and that's how you're saying sleep.
Yeah, exactly that. And also I love those hours where like you couldn't be distracted. So like everyone sleeps at night and like everyone sleeps in the morning. So like no one's bothering you. So you kind of just can't like zone in and just do whatever you want to do. But then I think it goes back to that thing of like, I just always wanted to be like, okay, cool, like you don't need sleep. Like it's fine, like you can do it. You can take on like the world. And then definitely also just like nutrition, like not even understanding the importance of it, not working out consistently.
Well, if you think about yourself as an athlete, yeah, and like if you work things, because often people, they think because they work in corporate or they work in a job and they're not an athlete, they don't think that the nutrition is what can help them sustain their performance.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm speaking not from experience. I'm speaking from like as one of the people that are suffering from that very condition. But yeah, so you're saying you're not sleeping, you're not eating right, and how's this manifesting in your day to day? I think you mentioned you were very tired and didn't have any energy.
Yeah, I think touching on that, it's also like once you kind of step out of it, you can see it. Like you can't keep going all the time because like so fatigued.
Yeah.
Like you can't focus.
Yeah.
Like on your basic stuff. Like you need sleep, like any human needs sleep, and you need a rest, and you need to like actually have downtime in order to do your best work.
Yeah.
I think it just manifested in that, like always being tired, but then like consistently pushing all the time. And then not being able to focus, and then being like super frustrated because like you can't focus and you're not performing.
And that must be messing with your identity of someone who is a performer.
Yeah. And then like things are slipping.
It's just a terrible like concoction of, well, it's like a cycle, you know, like I got to push to be good, but I'm pushing so much and I'm tired and I can't then push to be good. But now obviously that's not good because I push harder. I'm just constantly running in the circle of just making things worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
I guess the point that we get to is this huge burnout.
Yeah.
And what did it feel like to be that burnt out? Because you were one thing I want to preface is like one thing we didn't talk about is the entire time throughout that year were you really pushing hard, you're constantly playing with this burnout. You keep touching it and you keep touching it, because you're never stopping. But then eventually it breaks through and like now you are fundamentally burnt out. So with burnout, tell me, for people that don't know, what does burnout actually feel like?
Awful. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. And I think it's a good point that you made in terms of like you keep pushing the boundaries, because even though I was like, there was still a thing of like, no, like you can just keep going and keep going. And I think it was also like, I'm also a bit of like a self-aware person, so I do know my moods and I can like explain it, and generally like so happy and bubbly and like can see like the positive side of anything. And then it got to like a very like, okay, cool, like things are what they are. Like I'm not going to push anymore. And I think I mentioned to you that thing of like quiet quitting by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
And I used to pride myself on like also just kind of like knowing when things would go wrong and like preempt this and preempt that. And then also like switch into a mindset of like, cool, things are what they are. Like I'm going to do the bare minimum and like this is it. And then also just not like trying.
Well, that doesn't sound like you at all. In your entire story, that doesn't sound like who you are as a person. Yeah. So then get to a point where you are so disassociated that you're contemplating quiet quitting, which is the opposite of what you were previously.
Yeah.
I think it speaks 100%. To just how bad of a mindset or frame you are at that point in time. Did you feel any feelings of like depression, like any like feeling really depressed and really down? And because obviously you had the energy from the fact that you're not sleeping and not having the right nutrition, but did you ever feel really like a really bad mood and very negative? Yeah,
100% a bad mood. In terms of negative, like nothing really stands out in terms of like I hate this and I hate that. Like I don't think it was that, but bad mood 100%. I was like constantly just frustrated. And in the work that I do, like I love work, and I know that like I need a change when it's something that I don't want to put my all into. Yeah. Because I also just love learning and like trying new things and just like seeing what else is out there. And I think it like kind of hit a point where I didn't want to try. And I was just doing that and like, cool, I was like, this will get me by and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I kind of just lost like passion for it, and I didn't really, like I also didn't even like, I don't think I knew what it was. So I couldn't tell anyone like, oh, hey, I'm burnt out. Like this is the thing that's going on. It's kind of like, I'm tired and like, I'm very emotional. Like I don't know what's going on. Like I just don't feel like myself. And I think I also have this like, I like really remember waking up, and I think I told you earlier as well that like I'm not a person that wakes up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like another day. Like I get like really excited for the day and I'm like, oh, these are my tasks, like these are what I need to do, and like this like amazing thing is happening and like I have this to look forward to. But it also kind of switched into like obviously not sleeping, and then you feel the weight of like all the tasks that are there. But also, like I said earlier, like you sign like so much like significance to things. So, like,
even if they're small, everything feels huge.
Everything feels huge. Also, like everything just feels like so overwhelming. And then to kind of like reduce that overwhelm, but then also to like procrastinate because you don't know where to start. So I think I ended up making so many like to-do lists and like brain dumps, and I was like, okay, it's going to go in my calendar, and then it's going to go on like my notes app, and then it's going to write it down.
You're clearly trying to get to it, but you just can't get to it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it feels like. Because you keep organizing it, but every time you're organizing it, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're doing something by organizing it, but then eventually the day goes by and you haven't done anything.
Yeah. And then you just add more overwhelm on top of that because you've spent a whole day and you've been busy, but you haven't been productive.
Terrible cycle. It's
a horrible cycle.
So how did you get through that? How did you get to where you are now?
I don't know if anyone's going to take my advice, but I eventually like it hit me to a point of like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I am just like super tired. Like my emotions just changed like all the time. And I couldn't explain it. I was just so tired. Like I was really emotional.
Yeah.
I just wasn't taking care of like anything. And yeah, it kind of just hit me and I was like, I know this isn't me and I need to remove myself like completely from the situation and kind of just quit. Like not in terms of like quit, but I was like, I know this isn't for me.
You needed a harsh change.
Yeah. I don't want to use the word quit because maybe that's just like my personality. I'm like, I didn't quit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You pivoted.
Yeah. So, nice way of saying it.
Right. So this was important to you. It's quite defining that you took a time, stepped away, and you just reconsidered what is it that you need to do and who you are and what you want to do.
Yeah. I think just reevaluated in terms of like what is important to me.
Your priorities.
And
it's a good one.
like is like whatever I'm doing now, is it getting me to like where I want to be? And also like, am I just happy here? Because I also can't fake it. Like if I don't want to be somewhere or if I don't see the value in something, then like I'm not a person that's going to fake it. But if I like 100% see it, like I'll drive through and like just go like in.
So then what is your one bit of advice? If we were to round off this conversation, what is this one thing that you would advise someone else who's really experiencing this issue of I'm trying to succeed here, but I'm just drained. I've just done too much. What advice are we giving this person?
Oh, it's so difficult to do in the moment, but I think like really just taking a step back.
Okay.
Because I think sometimes you can be like so in it and it feels like that is like your entire world.
Yeah.
And you can't see like anything else like besides that, and like what your mind is like telling you all the time, and like everything is this and like that, and like it's not the same. But kind of just taking a step back and be like, okay, cool, like this doesn't have to be like that. And I think you also always have a choice. So like, is this where you want to be? No. Like, why is it not like that? And like, where do you want to be? And what would you do to get there?
That point, you say you have a choice. I think that is paramount, because often, like you said, in the entire time when you were speaking about being in that low point, you felt like you didn't have an option. There was no other way but through. But there is other options. You need to take a step back. You don't need to continue that way. You can change it.
Yeah.
Everything is flexible in life. I like that. I think that's a great takeaway.
100%. Like I'll always like preface that, and like it's really difficult to see it in the moment.
Yeah. Because you're so in it.
You're so like stuck in it, and that's with like anything in life. But you can always take a step back, and there's always like different views of stuff. There's always like you can always change your circumstances. Yes. I believe in that like all the time. So if people like keep complaining and they keep staying here and they keep like just staying stuck where they are, like that is 100% your mindset. Well,
Carmin, thank you very much for sharing your story. I think it was very insightful. It's not the look that I would have thought burnout looks like. So it's interesting to hear. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.